Good. It's now 11:01. Most people have joined that we have on the list. Juha, do you want to start?
Sure, I will. What I'll do is first I'll share my face for a moment. We've had some little technical issues with the cameras here, but hey, my name is Juha Korpela, and I'm the Chief Product Officer for Ellie Technologies. And it's great to be here, invited by our friends, Peter and the guys from the 2150 company. And yeah, we'll be sharing some insights on how Ellie, the data modeling tool, and Datavault Builder work together. So, Peter, would you like to say a word or two for introducing yourself before I jump into the slides?
Yes, sure. My name is Peter Belles. I have a background in data warehousing for the past 20 years. I've worked in finance. I did some classical Inman style data modeling there. I've worked in telecommunications with more Kimball style data warehousing. And back in 2012, I came across Datavault and we really loved it, but we needed a tooling. That's why we started to create the Datavault Builder back then. And we always stayed with it. So we're a product vendor for the Datavault Builder tool. And we will now do a joint session. So Juha will prepare a data model, will explain what Ellie can help you with. I will then take his data model, import it into the Datavault Builder tool to show you how technical automation can work, that you get a whole overview about the tools. Thank you.
Precisely, yeah. So let me take over first. Brief introduction to Ellie, what Ellie is, what we do with it, and how it works in unison with Datavault Builder. So first things first, what is Ellie actually about? So Ellie is a data modeling tool, yes, but what is data modeling for Ellie? For us, it is primarily a kind of a communication tool between business and IT. So we're saying that by utilizing these kind of well-known, well-tested data modeling methods with an easy to use, fast, responsive tool like Ellie, you can get the problems solved that you usually get in the requirements analysis, for example, when you need to discuss with your business, figure out what the structure in the business actually is from which you should derive your data vault. But this is not only the only use case. We of course also serve all kinds of things where data modeling methods are being used to solve all kinds of business problems. The primary point of Ellie is that we want this process of figuring these things out be fast and easy. And to be able to do that, we want to bring in also the business people. We want to involve the people who actually understand what the data is about. And therefore, Ellie has been really focusing on UX, focusing on the speed and the feel of the tool. It's completely cloud-based. It runs on your web browser. Anyone can access Ellie. You don't have to install anything anywhere. Read access is free. It's easy to share models and glossaries and all kinds of content with your entire organization. The idea is that this kind of modeling is collaborative in its core. And what Ellie does as a tool is, of course, model design. And I'll show you in a brief demo very shortly how that works in practice. But it's not just drawing those models. It's also tightly interlinked with the glossary that we have. So basically what Ellie has is a glossary of business entities that you define as you model things. And then you have the models that you create that utilize those business entities. And this glossary is centralized within Ellie so that every single model you create, every drawing you make is constantly referring to this glossary. And basically it makes it so that models are no longer kind of individual documents that you lose on your SharePoint folders or something like that. No, it's a sort of holistic overview of your information architecture from which you're basically creating this kind of individual viewpoints that can be used in different situations. But that will make a lot more sense when I jump into the tool in just a moment. So model design and the business glossary, which are closely linked together. What we want to enable with this are basically collaboration. As I said, we want to bring in the business people for these data projects. This is vital in data vault context. You have to figure out what the actual taxonomy is, what are the real business keys, what are the entities behind those. And once we get that in place, we get people involved in this. We get the business people in who don't run away screaming from Ellie. They like to participate in modeling with Ellie. Then we can provide the metadata that we get from these models to automation tools like Datavault Builder in this case. And here we have right now a CSV file-based export thingy, which Peter has been using and which we will demo to you today. But in fact, very shortly, in just a week or two, we will be also releasing our very first API interfaces, meaning that grabbing data from Ellie programmatically is going to be easier than ever. So the process of how this kind of data vault use case works with Ellie is that when you are designing your data platforms, you're designing a solution that basically delivers your various business data sets to your actual consumers. The first step in this whole thing, in this whole data tool stack or this process, should be how you capture the actual business needs and the real structures of the real life business that you have. And Ellie is built to be optimal for this purpose. So using Ellie, using the kind of fast conceptual modeling techniques that we have, you are able to capture the actual real structures and feed it forwards to Datavault Builder or, well, other tools if you might have those. But the idea being that with Datavault Builder, we have made this as simple as possible so that the structures that you get via modeling with your business people with Ellie are fed directly into Datavault Builder, which is then able to create your actual data platform, your data vault structures in your platform of choice, which you are then utilizing with reporting tools, analytics tools, and providing that data back to your business. The important thing here is that when the sort of real business needs that you have captured with Ellie are fed throughout the pipeline, throughout the process here, then the data that comes out of the pipeline is more easily understandable. It's faster to figure out what the actual point there is, what are the insights. It's more actionable because it's in business language and it is in structures that actually support the business, that the business themselves understands, rather than in technical terms of SAP tables or whatnot, what you might have. So this for us has been vital. Basically, one more slide before I jump into the tool itself. What this means is that we see Ellie as basically a tool between the world of business and the world of data. And we want to kind of bridge this gap that many data projects have by enabling you to deliver data solutions that are actually driven by the real business rather than the technological structures that happen to exist under the hood in some sort of a CRM or whatever. So business-driven modeling driving the development of business-driven data platforms, especially valuable in data vault development. And we have a lot of use cases, a lot of clients doing data vault development, all based on the blueprints that you get from Ellie. So that's the slides. Just a moment, and I'll show you how it looks like. So here we have Ellie now running on my Chrome browser. It works on any browser, of course. This is the Datavault Builder environment that we have. I have my own personal playground here. What we have here is basically, as I said, we want to keep this simple. We want to keep it fast. We want to keep it approachable and accessible for business people as well. So we have a list of models. We have the glossary here and what we call reports, which are basically the export versions of those models. This, of course, is going to be changing with the upcoming APIs and other export-related changes that are upcoming in Ellie right now. But basically, models are very simple. You can have a look at this. For example, this is actually based on a real-life use case. where we have been modeling with the client an industrial production process. Here we can see that you have factories and production lines and so on, recipes that use raw materials to produce products and so on and so forth. You have sensors that are located within equipment and they produce measurements during the production runs. You are modeling the reality of that process, the information asset that you get out of it, rather than an individual system. In fact, in this example, the real use case was that the previous project had been just providing sensor measurement data without linking it with anything else. This was, of course, completely worthless from a business perspective, because they needed to know that, okay, if this is a temperature measurement, we need to know which raw materials have been used during that measurement so that we can figure out, what is heating up our equipment, and so on and so forth. Okay, but this is, of course, just a drawing. You have seen those. It's just a standard ER model. The trick with Ellie is, here's another model with customers, that all of these boxes, these entities, are actually parts of the glossary. So double-clicking on the customer, we are taken to the glossary entry of that customer. We can see that I have defined what the customer is. There are examples. I can add attributes. And what is cool is that once I've defined this customer entity once in any of my models, it's always the unique customer throughout my Ellie environment here. So Ellie tracks how you are using it in different models. Here we can see that in this Datavault Builder environment, I'm only using the customer entity in one model. But if we'll check that from my personal playground, which has a lot of things, you can see something that is actually more closer to reality. Customer entity especially is such that it is being used in all kinds of use cases, all kinds of data models, and we can see how that has been linked to other entities within these different models. So this starts to give you kind of an idea how the customer entity links to all other data assets you might have, without basically you having to build the whole massive enterprise data model by yourself. You can just focus on individual use cases, individual models, and keep building up throughout this kind of common glossary that we have here. Exporting models, I'll show you how that works in a moment. And that being said, that will also have the APIs available very, very soon. But what I'd like to show you now is how one of these example models is created. That is the model that we are going to be using in this demo. So let me jump over to my personal side here. We're creating a new model. This is now about flights. And an empty canvas, of course. The idea is that you can search or create the glossary, create entities here, search from the glossary. I can write anything here. If I write customer, it searches for entities from my glossary that match with the text here. So these are the predefined entities that I have. Now I'm interested in flights. So I have already defined flight. If I would write something else, I could create the entity directly from here. So flight, click and drag, that's the flight entity. Airport, of course, is interesting now because we are talking about flights. So airport entity and airlines in this very first example that we have. So I created two new entities. Then there's the existing flight entity. What the color codes here mean is that these are kind of the entity types that we've seen are beneficial when creating and reading these models. So this is kind of a best practice style that we have added on top of your standard ER modeling, meaning that basically black means master data. These purple ones are what we call contract data, so things that exist from a certain time to a certain time. There are transactions and reference element entities and so on and so forth. And these yellow ones are basically just undefined. So let me switch those to black, because we know that there are a bunch of airports, that there are a bunch of airlines. And we can say that, all right, for a given flight, of course, there are two relationships to the airport, one being the origin and one being the destination. So very simply, we can define what this model is about here. And this already now will show up in the glossary view of the airport. We can see that it has been now linked to the flight entity in this flight model. But now then, of course, we want to also link it with the airline. And at this point, we would have to figure out what do we actually mean by a flight. So I don't have a description here, but I have a ready-made description on another place. So what we can say is that a flight is a journey taken by a single aircraft, etc., etc. We will write down what the flight means so that the next person looking at the model figures out, okay, well, this is what they mean by flight. Good, now I understand how that links with the airline. So we can say that the single flight is always operated by a single airline. That makes sense, yes. Operated by, and then we can say that, okay, actually flights are being sold, so you can get tickets to a single flight from multiple airlines, actually, because of code sharing and so on and so forth. So we will have to make a many-to-many relationship here, saying that this is the sold by relationship. And there we go. This is a super simple example of how we are modeling the data content behind the business, regardless of the systems involved in this. Now, in the near future, this within a quarter or two, we will also be adding another layer of modeling into Ellie, meaning that you can also go step further into defining various logical models which link with these business glossary entities here. But this is already valuable because it gives you the understanding of the business content, and it gives you the actual entities that need to be the basis of your data vault design. So this is, of course, now a super simple model, and we'll show you at some point how a slightly more complicated model looks like. But this could then be exported out. I'll create a flights export, the sort of exportable version of this model. And here we can get entities, attributes, and relationships out, saying that, all right, so we have now the flight data entities. So a CSV file basically containing all the metadata of these entities. You can see that the entities have their unique identifiers. This is why they are unique throughout your Ellie environment. There's the label, the type of entity, and we have all the metadata that we had added. Right now, it's just the description here, but we also have URLs to the glossary entries. And this metadata is used by Peter very shortly in Datavault Builder to basically set up the entities and their relationships between each other in order to basically import this model into Datavault Builder. And once we get the logical models in, this will also be, of course, enriched with, for example, key information. So which are the primary keys and foreign keys and so on and so forth, making the linkage even more easier. But this is the kind of basics of Ellie. It's meant to be a quick, a fast, easy and a very accessible way of figuring out what data is about, getting the business involved, getting the understanding of the core entities which have those business keys, which are what Datavault is all about, and then taking that into the technical kind of implementation tools like Datavault Builder, where you can then set up the actual Datavault solution. But that being said, Datavault building is just one of the use cases Ellie is currently used for. We have clients doing master data management projects. Some are thinking ERP renewals and figuring out what the data is. We have data governance projects going on at clients where in all of these, you have to figure out what the data content is in business terms first before you go into any further implementation. And this is how you start building up project by project, model by model. You start building up your glossary. You start figuring out how these things actually are linked together in different points of view. So that basically concludes my part of this. What I'd like to show you as kind of the final word is recap of this. So what we have done here is figuring out what the business needs are. The business needed data about flights, so figured out core concepts. And now we will, via those CSV files and in the near future via APIs, feed that to Datavault Builder, where the technical implementation can then begin. So without further ado, Peter.
Thank you. Yeah, do you want to answer the question we have on the question and answer section? I think it's directed to you.
Very good. Do you provide templates or canonical models? Excellent question. So not yet, but we are planning to do so. The idea is that at some point, I hope in the near future, we would have kind of a library of various models. We have, of course, all seen that certain things repeat from organization to organization. Invoicing usually looks like it's almost exactly the same model from organization to another. Marketing is one. So these kind of template models could be possibly within Ellie in the future, but not yet at this point. One more thing I would like to add actually to this is that if you want to try it out, we have a 60-day free trial, and for that trial we can copy some of these example models for you, so you can look at them and see how this modeling has worked. So that's something that we can certainly do already now.
Cool. Thank you.
All right.
So by the way, that's a very good way. If you have any questions while we're speaking, please put it in Q&A and we will see if it makes sense to answer it directly or if we show it anyway a little bit later. So that's good. So what is the Datavault Builder? It is a model-driven data warehouse automation tool. And that's why we're so happy that as well there are other tools around capturing very good business models. You can capture basic models in the Datavault Builder, but as we have seen, if you want to have a lot of attributes, if you want to have collaboration doing workshop, it can pay off if it fits your needs to use a tool like Ellie. And I really like Ellie because it has the same approach about a very visual concept, very nice graphics, and even it might seem like a minor point, it's very, very important to get everybody involved. And that's for us as well very important that we create business models with all the people in the company and not just the technical ones. We are then helping you making out of it a data warehouse, which is agile and self-service ready. So as well delivering service back to the business users that helped us to create a model. And mainly we're automating to save costs and time. And for sure, as well reducing risk, increasing maintainability. But the main driver, if we talk to people, is usually to save time and costs. And that's where we're very good at and where we're helping you with. So just about the Datavault Builder, it's developed here by a team here in Switzerland. We have a development partner in Munich. Together we have now 130 employees. We're covering mainly the European markets, North America, Australia today, and steadily growing since 2015 with the Datavault Builder product. Just as well that you get an idea that we are not just claiming it ourselves, that we're very good in time to market, but there is as well a BARC study which compared us to other tools like Informatica, SSIS from Microsoft, SAP tools, Oracle tools, and they came up with the finding that we're top in the category time to market. And we will try to show you why this is, because we're integrating with a lot of other tools. We have API for everything, so we can import the API, the model that you has created for me using our APIs. We can extend them using their APIs, and we can integrate very fast visually within the tool, new data connected to the model and create our first output. So what is the Datavault Builder about? Because if you talk about automation, many people think about model to code generation. And yes, that's important part. We are doing that, but we're doing it a little bit different. We have a visual interface and we are updating the technical implementation over time. This means we are not just generating you once your technical implementation, but even if you upgrade your database to a newer version, then you get new patterns from us, you get update scripts, and we will be updating technical implementation because we are assuming the business model that you created in Ellie will stay stable over time because that changes if your business changes, but the technical implementation changes more often. What I will show you as well a little bit later is that we are doing as well the reverse. So if you change your technical model, we will update the logical model. But additionally, to other tools, we are automating as well your environments. So we are using a so-called Docker deployment that you can run your environments on-prem in the cloud, but as well set up new environments really within minutes. We have included automated testing. So we have REST APIs that you can include your testing tools like Quality Center, like Tosca, whatever you're using. Postman is used today as well by certain teams, so that we get our solution as well tested, and we can do regression testing completely automatically. After that, the question is how to deploy that. We have there different deployment methods. One is simplified deployment. If you have just like a development, test, and production environment to compare them, create your deployment scripts automatically, click the button, and it's done. If you're in bigger teams, we support so-called Git-based deployment, where you can merge and branch and merge your technical models and as well your logical models. Then if you do this manually, at some point you want to automate that as well. So we have REST APIs for CI/CD workflows. If you want to use it with tools like Jenkins or online pipeline tools, that's possible. You can completely automatically create a new environment, load the data model, do an integration test, validate the stuff back into Git without any manual interaction. If you deployed everything to your production environment, you want to operate your data warehouse, and that's where we help you by creating your master jobs automatically based on the dependencies we read from the model. We parallelize your loads. You can schedule your loads within the tool or use REST APIs to use your enterprise schedulers like Chronicle, UC4, Airflow, whatever you're using in your company. At the end, if you want to reach high availability, we can show you there as well how this can be reached using this tool. But what is it doing for a business user? That's a very simplified graphic. Usually try to explain the business user what he will get out of it, because they heard about data warehouses. They're complicated. There are a lot of tables. There's historization, stuff like that. And they get sometimes a little bit afraid. So we say, don't worry about it. The basic idea is we get your data sources into a core where we persist the data, but that's not where you access. For you, we create usually a dimensional model with all the rules that you need that you're accessing, and that's the optimal format for your reporting tools. So for them, in fact, they don't need to worry how the core is stored. If it's third normal form, Datavault, or dimensional directly stored, they always get the interface in the format they want. And as we are ELT tools, so we are performing most of the work on the database. We're using relational databases below our tool. This can be SQL Server and all its variation, including Synapse soon. It can be Snowflake, Exasol, Oracle, Postgres. So there are different databases where we run our loads on. So where comes Ellie into the game? And this is here, because we want to create our technical data vault by a model. We are taking now the business model that Ellie provides, import it here, and from that model, we will create automatically the technical implementation. And this is the part we're showing today. I will connect to the Ellie tool, to the export capabilities they have. If they would provide already the APIs, or as soon as they provide it, we can read directly from them. But so far, the exports are already sufficient to get all the metadata we need. We generate the import file now for our model in this case, because it's more visual what I'm doing here. But as well here, we have already the APIs to import it automatically as well right now. So maybe for the more technical people, what are we doing then? Later on, we will connect as well our staging layer to our source file. So we have a built-in ETL capabilities. We will then load the data in here into our core. That will be part of the demo. And then we will create a short output interface to present the data to our data models. As mentioned before, everything that we are doing in the Datavault Builder has its API, because we have a proper three-tier architecture. So nothing in the tool is done without the REST API, because as well the graphical user interface I'm using is calling in the background just the APIs that we have. The APIs are documented, so the integration with all the other tools is very simple. The Ellie integration that I have built here for this webinar took me about, I think, 20 to 25 minutes, because it was really data in the format that we expected, and we have the REST API. Just needed to create a small Python script to create a conversion. So let's go into live demonstration, and I will pick up now where Juha left off. I will go into Ellie, and he created me here a basic model. This is the one that you have seen, and I will now use the export capabilities here, and it will download me some CSV files. We can have a look how the CSV files look like. Let me just drag in here to my presentation. So it's very, very simple, but it has all the relevant information with the names and the description. And this is what I will now send into the conversion. So the conversion that I'm using here, as mentioned, is a short Python script. But in fact, what it is doing is just reading the data in the format that I downloaded and will convert it in the format we are expecting. And you see now the format that we are expecting, which is a JSON kind of format. It took a few seconds. And now I can use this converted output in our deployment tool. As I say, I'm showing it here to show it visually, because if I would just call the APIs, you would just see the result. So I'm now selecting the folder that I generated, drag in here the converted files. And if I compare it in the right direction, it now tells me which kind of objects do exist in the model I'm trying to import. It compares it to what is already in my environment. And as this is a new environment I just set up, everything needs to be imported. So I select, yes, that's fine, select everything. You see already here in the comparison that as well the comments will be taken over. So let's deploy that. And that's it. Let's have a look now how it looks here in our model. So we have as well the flight with several link connections to the airport and the airline. And now the part of the Datavault Builder starts. So now we want to connect it from a data-driven perspective to this business-driven model. So let's go back into the staging area. Let's add here some source system. I'm taking here a CSV source, but you could as well connect to database sources. And I will skip a lot of options like delta loading and all the stuff because we have just 5 minutes now for the demonstration. I just want to show you that we really can connect two things together. So I'm staging here a table, and here we see a big advantage of the Datavault Builder, that it's working directly with the underlying database. So if I'm adding here a data load, it's creating the ETL flow, it's creating the target table, executing everything at once on your development machine, and staging the data. So this is how long it took to create a production-ready staging load. And now what we will do in the next step is connect it here with our flight entity. And for that, I just need to define the key. And as we have heard, maybe later Ellie will deliver us as well the key information, so we could automate this using our APIs as well. And for a flight, I would now talk to the business user and ask him, what is the business key? And they usually tell us stuff like, okay, it's the flight number. And they tell us maybe it's the date. We ask, is this everything? And they say, yeah, that should be sufficient to identify a flight in the real world. So we test this, and now we are working directly with the database. We check if this kind of key combination works out. We get the feedback that it's not. The tool gives you a feedback which kind of duplicates you have in your data set. It shows you a sample data set, and now we see already here the carrier. This is in fact what Juha already has modeled, because he was saying, yes, a flight can be sold by different airlines, that's code sharing. So we need to add here the carrier code into this. And this is the way of agile working, that we can work directly with the business user, get their input, give them feedback if it works out, if not. And even with this modified business key, it's still not working out. So let's have a look at it. And we see that WN in the business key seems to be duplicated. Why that? And if we look at the data, we see that there is a difference in the kind of origin. And in fact, that's true. Southwestern Airlines is providing round trip flights. So they're reusing the flight number on the same day. So we need to add here as well the airport of origin into the business key. And this is our kind of small iterative changes that we do and test before we implement everything. And from now on that we have as well the business key, everything else will now be automated. So on the database, all the necessary tables, all the necessary loads will be added. And they are already production ready. So now we have a fully historized SCD type 2 CDC load into our data warehouse core, and we can start loading data. And you see, if it's that fast, it really opens new possibilities how you can work together with your business users, because even if they don't know it exactly, they can sit by your desk and you can give them the description that were captured before so they understand what needs to be done. Let's load as well the data. And that's it. We have a production ready core implementation. So we already had like the modeling session. We have taken over the model into the automation tool. We have staged some data. We have loaded it and connected it with our existing business model. Let's go to the next step. Now let's create an interface, because here, as I mentioned, for the business user and for the report users, it should be a very simple interface. So you choose the grain of the interface. You can choose here the denormalization level that they want. If they want to see more normalized ways, like if you have like sub business objects as a reporting tool or Cognos, or if they want to have something more denormalized, like a dimensional model, if you use Tableau or Click or Power BI today, you just can select the columns which you want to output. This gives you some feeling of how self-service BI can look like, because here the tool is writing the SQL in the background. It would write all the necessary joins to bring the model together and denormalize up to the level that you need it. We haven't written one line of code so far, and that's how it works out. We don't need to reload because this is creating virtual views on the target system in real time. So this is now the view that the client can have a look at. So we just published that, that's the last step. And now we have managed full run through the system from model, import into the automation solution, added some data, loaded it into the vault, created some interfaces, and now we can call our business user to create his first report. And I'm using here ClickView. That's not because it's like the best tool to use, but because it's the only tool that I know how to operate. And what I'm showing here is just that by using metadata to drive all your solution, you can as well automate the report creation. So creating here a load script for ClickView can be automated. It could be done for Tableau, Power BI, whatever you want. And now the user sees the first output. And usually, you know it, how it works out. It's what they ordered, so you deliver it to them, and now they figure out that they want some changes. So story 1 is completed. We would go into story 2, and I just do a small rename, and I add here something that can be summed, that we see a meaningful output. So let's rename here carrier as carrier code, which it is. Store that. I don't need to reload any data because it's automatically changed in the virtual layer. So renaming columns is very simple. Now let's add a very, very simple rule to add some countable. And the business rules are written in pure SQL code, but we made SQL manageable by splitting it up into smaller parts. And you can comment on it. And that's it. I don't need to join the data here together because it's really knowing how to work with the data, how to join stuff together. So the SQL that I needed to put in was very, very simple. I just called the user, ask him to reload, and he gets his first report. And we see that WN, Southwestern Airlines, is the biggest airline in number of flights in the data set that we have, and that how fast it can work now through the pipeline. And it's really integrated, that we really don't have any media break between modeling, between implementation, automation up to the report level, and that we can, in an agile way, change our stuff. What you get with it, data lineage was created in the background, so we can filter here maybe for the data flow we have created. So we have the source system, we have staging table, now we have the objects that are linking back to Ellie, where we have created the keys and the attributes, we have created some interface, we have created some simple business rule, and we have the output layer where the report is accessing it. As well, operations was already solved, so you don't need to take care about now where to schedule or how to run your jobs. It's everything built in the background. You could schedule it here, you can build dependencies here. And it now runs everything in the right order, because model-based, we know exactly how the dependencies are. Now we can as well generate some documentation. You see down to the column level that everything through all the layers is documented. It includes model excerpts, so we see what you have modeled here as well in the documentation. And the nice thing is, if you want to access this kind of information and import it into your reports, I can show you how it looks on the database, and in the database you get corresponding views. So let's have a look at the list of objects, of hub objects that we have. Let's refresh that because that's an old view, and this is the model that I just imported, and it's called including the hub names. But again, here the comment that was captured in Ellie is visible here as well on the database level. So if you want to import that in your Tableau report, in your ClickView report, you can do that. So you don't have any media break through all these layers up to your business users seeing the report again. And if you can deliver them this, they will understand that if they help in the modeling phase, providing the definitions, they will profit from it at the end by getting the correct implementation and getting this kind of descriptions back in their reports. As well, what is in there is deployment. So if you want to then deploy the data, we could do it because it's production ready. We really finished our first implementation. And now let's assume that we gain some insight and you need to adapt the model. And here I would hand over back to Juha. I just read the question first.
Sure.
How does the Datavault Builder handle PI data? That's about GDPR. Does it expect already anonymized data, or is there a way in the Datavault Builder? And that's in fact not a technical questions for me, but a legal questions. In banking, where we really need to provide it that even in the data warehouse, data is already anonymized. We usually have a service in between the source system and our staging that we just get the anonymized data, and then on the need to know principle, you could go to your anonymization service and unanonymize it if necessary. In other scenarios where the backend people are allowed to work with the data, then you can do stuff like that. You really load the data and anonymize it here with your own stored procedure. So we recommend usually then to put this sensitive data in its own satellites. And then after a job load completed, usually after the data was loaded, you can run your procedure and check if anything needs to be anonymized, because we had it again and again that we anonymized data and in the next data load, it was redelivered from one of the source systems. So you need to build in a check that based on your anonymization list, this is re-executed again and again. Good. Does Datavault Builder export the pipelines to Airflow or any other data orchestration tool? We don't need to. It's built in, and it's built in because we are changing it on the fly. Because the point is, you could change your technical implementation. The tool will detect it automatically. It's one of our biggest advantages if you're using Datavault Builder, that we don't have a disconnect between the database and the model, and we would change the flow. So you don't need to worry about if you deploy like one of the elements to the next layer that you need to change your master job. So the tool is doing it automatically. And we are using pure SQL sent to the database. This SQL is logged in the logging table, so you would see it. If you would like to take it in another tool, you could, but you wouldn't benefit then of any of all the functionality. But how we work together with Airflow is usually that Airflow at the right point in time is triggering this kind of jobs, because these jobs can be triggered by a REST API, which means that if I'm starting here a job, I can have a look on.
Peter, I think you're still sharing the database screen.
Oh, thank you. Oh, so let's go back here. So if I start here a job, then I can look on the initiate job stuff. And this is what usually then Airflow is triggering to get the job started within Datavault Builder. Good. So I would hand over back to Juha.
Yes, thank you. So Peter was already hinting at the more information that we got. So now, of course, we did an extremely simple model in the beginning. So This is super simple. And I think anyone who has worked with any kind of airline business or even traveled by aircraft knows that this is not how it is in reality. Life is not that simple. So what I have done actually is I have figured out that, yes, this is not the right model. We were too simplistic. This is more closer to the right model. So now you could kind of first start to see how this thing develops, that we start to understand the business better. We create this model, we create a new model, and we say that, okay, actually what happens is that the airports are the origins and destinations of certain flight routes, which are used on multiple flights. So the flight is the kind of single event of a single plane going from single place to another place at a certain time. The route itself is something that is used on multiple flights. And the flight is actually something where an aircraft is used, and that aircraft is operated by an airline. The airline then sells tickets, so there are different flight numbers for which the tickets are sold by the airline, and these flight numbers actually exist on multiple flights, and a single flight can have multiple flight numbers, as you all know, the code sharing thing that happens. So this actually starts to get closer to the real complexity of the business. And here we would also see and probably realize that, hey, probably this might be already something that we have to take into account in our data governance or so on and so forth. But of course, it affects how the data vault needs to be built, because it is important that the core of the data vault is based on the real business understanding. So we have an upgraded model, still about the same data, and now through the same pipeline of exporting this out as CSV files and giving that over to Peter and running the Python scripts and so on, we can see what happens in the Datavault Builder. So Peter, go ahead.
Thank you. So I go back to Ellie, and thank you for the extended model. I export it again. And now I do the fast version. I just run the script in the background. I go back to the Datavault Builder deployments tool method. Select to import the folder, and let's see. Yeah. And now what it does, it's not just importing it as this, but it's now comparing the different versions. And what we see here is that some stuff was added, like the flight route, but as well that some stuff was removed, which isn't, because it's a technical implementation. It's like the satellite. But on the model side, some relations were removed. And so I can now select exactly what I want to import. If I want to automate that, I can as well put in some rules that, like, from the source, I just want to compare the logical object and not the technical one. So I wouldn't need to click everything manually, but I will now just select it here. So I don't delete anything from staging. I don't delete anything here. Let's do it differently. Unselect all. I can just say create events. That's what I want to do. And now let's do all. And what I want to do, oops, just clicked wrong, sorry. I need to say select all filtered. And I want as well the model parts that you have removed as well, remove from my model. So let's execute that. And it's now running the model update. And if you look now on the drop-down list, you see that more stuff appeared. So let's have a look how it looks now. We have the flight, we have the flight number, we have the aircraft and the flight route that was added. We have the airport with origin and destination. So you see that everything that was changed in the model in Ellie as well was updated in the Datavault Builder. So if you have the basic model for comparison, we had a direct link from flight to the airport, which is now removed. And now we have the updated version. And I clicked it now manually. So it looks a little bit more complicated than it is, but all the steps that I did have its corresponding REST API. So I could have run them with the Python script, converting the data and directly executing it, just it wouldn't be that visible for you here in the demonstration. Still, all the loads that we defined are continue working, so we can just go to our job, restart our job, load our newest data. That's fine, it's still working. But we could go on now and say, okay, now we can start implementing like the flight route. And probably that would be based on the flight number, maybe the origin and destination. That I'm not enough knowledgeable about the flight industry, but here I would talk to the business user and understand now how this could look like. Good. I would propose that I will conclude the general presentation here, and that we have like a few minutes for questions and answers. So let's go back to our slide and wait if there are more questions coming up. So one is, do you have a smoke testing mechanism to validate the data from the model automatic generation? This is mainly to know the business keys are good enough or not. Yes. In fact, this is what I was showing already while we were creating the key, while adding it here, that I was clicking the so-called business key checker. So this was the point when I would choose, okay, it tells me that I did that already. That's a good hint. I can just show it here. So let's assume that I would have chosen the wrong key. It would give me already like an indication that this is not unique and give me hints how many duplicates I have or not. So it wouldn't let me create it, except I tell him I don't care about it. It would be possible, but generally, if I want to create a hub load where the grain is the same in the staging table and in the target object, then I would follow up on this and assume that this is the wrong business key. Later on, as well, while loading the data, usually we keep this on. You could turn it off as well if you say I don't care about it, but there are checks that keys are unique. If not, this load will be stopped. And later on, I have a button if there are duplicates to show me exactly this kind of analysis of where the duplicates are. Any more questions? Question is, does it run in the cloud? Juha, you want to first answer from your
sure. So from Ellie's point of view, yes, everything runs on the cloud. It's a SaaS product. So basically you sign up, you get access to Ellie immediately, and there you go. Yes, super simple.
The same is true for the Datavault Builder, but here you have the option. You can run it you run it usually in your private cloud. This means that we don't have any access, or nobody has access to your installation, because you're dealing with sensitive data mostly. So you can choose if you deploy it on AWS, Azure, Google Cloud Computing, or any smaller cloud provider, as long as they offer Docker. But as well, and especially in the financial industry, in Germany and Switzerland, we are offering as well the possibility to run it on site, because it's Docker based. You just need a Linux server set up as Docker host, and then you can run it on site, and you can choose at any point in time to move it between cloud and on-site, or in the other direction, or between cloud providers, because we don't know how the pricing will be in 3, 5, or 10 years. And as we calculate with such a long runtime, you are completely free to move it between the providers without any cost.
I might add to that there's a difference between the setups of these tools, in the sense that whereas Datavault Builder connects to data sources and handles actual data, Ellie doesn't. So Ellie basically is the place for your models, and the glossary and all projects in your company can use it with their own modeling needs, but no real data actually is stored in Ellie, and that's why we can keep it as a sort of very simple SaaS product rather than having it in your private cloud or even on-prem.
Okay. One more question is, what happens if we cannot define the right key? A source doesn't have it. So I like this because it really comes up in real projects. The problem is, usually I would recommend go back to your sources and tell them without a key you can't identify your data. If you can't identify your data, it has no value, because you're not sure if it has duplicate, stuff like that. But I understand exactly where the question is coming from. We as data warehouse team sometimes don't have the power to change something. We just need to load the data, at least to present it to the business user so they can complain back to the source system. So one thing is we have the so-called persistent staging area here. So we can use technical keys to load it. That's already solving like 90 to 95% of this problematic cases, that at least technical key is clean, even if you have duplicates and customer keys, if we have missing order numbers and stuff like that, that happens again and again. If that doesn't work out, there's still a solution of last resort. So exactly for that, just to show it to the business user that the data is not usable, we have the so-called row ID. So while staging the data, we assign a random ID in the order the data comes in, that you can create a load. But this is really a last resort solution, temporary, to present what is there. If you would load daily data based on this artificial key, it could show you changes that are not there and stuff like that. You couldn't track duplicates, so please don't do it. It's just, this is the general approach we have. We offer you always a solution to keep on going, but we always recommend you to create the proper solutions that are manageable and maintainable over time. Good. So maybe as last thing, you mentioned that you're offering a test run. The Datavault Builder, even as soon as you use it, is a very simple tool to use. It has some learning curve because there are many things involved. You need to connect to sources, you need to do whatever. So what we are offering as well, that we give you free webinars specifically to your questions, that we can as well do co-modeling sessions with your data. If you bring us desensitized data, we can show it how it works in tool and walk you through in a very short time, that you get a basic feeling. But usually then, if you get a good feeling that this could be something for you, the next step is usually, and that what can be then a joint effort with Ellie together, is to go into a POC and show you the full development pipeline, how this could work for you.
Indeed, and I might add on that Ellie.ai is our website, and there you have a relatively large request a demo button, which is basically your way to the 60-day free trial. No questions asked. You can get a full version of Ellie up and running in just minutes via that. So heartily recommended.
Okay, we got 3 more questions. I would say we would answer these 3 questions if this is okay for you, Juha. And then if there are more, please contact us on LinkedIn, put the questions in there. We're very happy to answer them. So there is the question of subscription fees. From my side, what we need to know that we can give you an offer is that we need the sizing of your database, or what database technology you use, what is the sizing and the number of developers. These are the key drivers for us. Maybe you can comment on your side. What are the basic drivers of subscription fees?
Yes, so for Ellie, the subscription fee is based on the number of write access users, that is the people who actually create models. Read access is always free. So we have kind of a tiered subscription system, and at a certain tier, you get a certain number of write access licenses. Usually the contracts run by the year, and you can of course upgrade from a tier to another. More information on that is of course available from our website and from our sales, but basically it's a tiered subscription system.
Good. By the way, the same for us. Read-only users don't pay anything, so that's in line, because we believe that models should be shared, otherwise they have no value. I think that's a shared understanding, as I think. Good. Can we export the model diagram to other tools? For Ellie, we have seen it. Yes, we imported in the Datavault Builder. The same is true for Datavault Builder. We have just one button, export. You get it in JSON format. You have REST APIs. You have database views offering you all the metadata you ever entered into Datavault Builder to export it, to sync it back to other tools, because we are very, very open in our ecosystem to share this kind of information, or you can share your information with whoever you want. Do you want to add something from your side, Juha?
No, that's basically it, yes.
Good. And the last is it possible to get information type of data from the data sources somehow, descriptions of tables and fields? Yes, this is out of the box. I now use the text file. That's why I didn't import any data types or any comments, because it was just a CSV file. If you load from database sources in the staging module in Datavault Builder, it is automatically taking over the comments. It is taking data types and everything, converts them. that it's into a matching data type on the data warehouse database you're using. So that's everything built in. Maybe you want to comment on this as well from your side?
Sure, yeah, I was actually about to. So for Ellie, if you happen to have your business glossary or terminology somewhere else, you can import these glossary entries and their descriptions and their attributes into Ellie and use them there as entities in the model.
Good. So we have 12 o'clock. From my side, I want to thank you a lot for all the people that attended. We had a really big group here listening, and we're very happy that we got so many questions, interesting questions. So thank you from my side, and I hand over to Juha for closing
Yes.
the webinar.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for inviting us there, Peter. So it's been super great to be here, and I'm looking forward to even more cooperation with you guys. I think what we have here is a pretty nice package, really valuable. So thank you from my side. Yes.
Same from my side. Thank you a lot, and hear you soon. Bye.
Bye-bye.